So since both of you talked about more about the employee's perspective, let me just take the employer's perspective and see tell you about the underinvestment in retail jobs and why that happens and what are the consequences of this. So when you look at retail employment, what you find is that retailers underinvest not just in the quality of their labor, so quality in terms of low training, very low wages, etc., low benefits, but also in the quantity of their employees. So it was really striking to me as a person who studies operations management. When I looked at retailers, I saw that they often didn't have enough labor on the selling floor. How many of you have been to a store and you just didn't find enough people to help you? Okay, understanding. You're even laughing. So at one retailer, I found that if they had more labor, if they had more hours of employees working on the selling floor, they would make more money. Another colleague of mine from Wharton had a very similar finding in his study. So why is it that retailers underinvest both in the quality and quantity of labor? We should be asking this question. And I think there are three main reasons for that. The first one is something that Steve has alluded to, is that retailers view labor as just as a cost to be minimized, not as an asset to be maximized. And when you view labor this way, it has some consequences. So retail is a really competitive industry. Retailers have low profit margins, even the luxury retailers, and many retailers will have single-digit profit margins. What does that mean? They have to control their costs very well. And when you look at labor, labor is definitely the highest, at most retailers, highest, largest controllable cost. So they approach it very carefully. So number one is that. Number two is the performance management systems and the pressure that performance management systems put on the store managers to cut labor spending. So many retail chains, since labor is such a large expense, they evaluate their store managers on payroll as a percentage of sales. So how well they manage that expense. So let's look at the numerator and the denominator, payroll and sales. So when you look at store managers, there's not so much they can do to affect sales. So merchandise mix, the merchandise layout, store layout, the location of the stores, the weather, all these things, and price is determined centrally. So there's only so much they can do to affect sales. But when you look at the numerator, payroll, although they can't also often affect wages, what they can affect is the number of hours and the full-time, part-time mix. So when they're under pressure to meet those targets, payroll as a percentage of targets, which are sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, what they end up doing is when sales shrink, payroll shrinks. And they end up cutting labor hours, and the pressure is so much that sometimes they revert to not reporting the hours that employees often work, which Steve, so brilliantly reported several times. So that's the number two reason, the performance management. And then the number three reason is from a business point of view, when you look at labor, when you cut labor, you immediately see an increase in your bottom line. It's very direct and it's very quantifiable. But the cost of cutting labor are indirect, they're long-term, and they're not very quantifiable. So when managers try to trade off, direct costs versus indirect benefits, the direct cost always wins. And unfortunately, many retail managers and investors who invest in retail have a poor understanding of the long-term benefits of investing in labor. So those are the reasons why retailers end up under-investing in both the quality and quantity of employees. And then what happens? Let me ask you a question. How many of you have had a bad customer service experience? Right? So when you don't invest in your labor,
5 hours.
So what happens is, even at low-cost retailers, right, you don't expect personalized service, but you expect merchandise to be in stock where it's supposed to be. You expect the tags, the prices to be accurate. You expect the checkouts to be shorter. These operational tasks don't get done when retailers don't invest in their labor. And when that happens, of course, sales and profits decrease. When sales decrease, payroll dollars, payroll budgets decrease along with that. And then you can't invest in your labor again. So that's the vicious cycle. And unfortunately, the sorry state of retailing from a business point of view: bad jobs, bad customer service, lower profits.